Okay, we'll just give it 10 more seconds. Okay, I think we will make a start. So it's lovely to have everybody with us. Welcome to our latest Industrial Biotechnology Innovation Catalyst webinar. Today is a little bit different because we've got an excellent panel line up for our discussion today. So we're going to focus the topic today on sort of sustainable manufacturing and the importance of partnership. My name's Aline Miller. I'm Professor and Associate Vice President for Enterprise at the University of Manchester, and I lead on our Industrial Biotechnology Innovation Catalyst programme, which I'll tell you a little bit about just in the first few minutes or so to kind of set the scene, and then we will dive straight into a panel discussion with our three panel members today, and we'll do some introductions shortly. So we are here today to talk really about some of the opportunities that are opening up for our Industrial Biotechnology Innovation Catalyst activity. The mission of our activity is to sort of build a Northwest region where industrial biotech or engineering biology is really kind of supercharging the growth of our bioeconomy within our region. So whether that's looking at the growth of careers, businesses, to build up sort of that regional economy, all whilst thinking about sustainability, delivering a low carbon economy or defossilizing the supply chain of the manufacture of everyday products. So I'll tell you a little bit about.
We're going to talk in this platform.
If you want to pop yourselves on mute for now, if you've got questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. We can look at them at the end of my presentation, and also we're going to have a chance to have an interactive panel discussion. So feel free to pop your questions in the chat, or at the time when we're having the discussion, keep all those questions under wraps, and we'll have a chance to have a proper Q&A at the end. So what I thought I would do is just talk a little bit about where we are, where we're funded from, and why we're opening up to right across the UK. So we are a place-based impact acceleration account grant funded through EPSRC. Place-based, i.e. the impact of everything that we're doing is going to be felt within the Northwest. The Northwest is sort of a fuzzy boundary area. So we're thinking about the Northwest as sort of Manchester, Liverpool, Cheshire, but we can be fuzzy up to sort of Lancashire, Leeds, and sort of surrounding areas. But I'll tell you a little bit about our funding mechanisms at the end, but that is opening up right across the UK. So we are all about trying to get the innovation and the research that we do within higher education institutes out into the real world to generate that impact. And we're all about trying to help people do that and accelerate doing that. And we'll talk about partnerships and what roles that can play today. But this is a busy slide. I include it because it's got lots of different pockets of activities that we do, and it's reflective of the breadth of activities that our IBIC, Industrial Biotechnology Innovation Catalyst, can fund and help support you with. So we have four sort of key pillars of activity that the £5.3 million that we have over 4 years helps support. One, which we'll probably look at a lot today, is sort of building networks and partnerships. So it's about trying to connect our academic community. The past year, we've been focused on the Northwest, but now we're looking at incorporating anybody from across the UK to help tap into and access the money and the grants and activities that we have, build out the network more broadly to generate that impact.
Sorry, Aline, we can still see the title slide. It's not advanced.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks for letting me know. Is that any better?
No, I can just still see the title slide.
Okay, let me stop sharing. You'll be wondering why I'm talking about a busy slide.
Yeah.
Okay, let me stop sharing and reshare and see if that's any better. Sometimes when I have the two screens on, it doesn't always work. Can you see
There we go.
the
Yeah.
busy slide now? Brilliant.
Yeah, that's
Thanks.
working and changing. Great.
Thanks for letting me know. So these are our 4 pillars of activity. You'll see we do have 4. So the first one, as I was talking about, is building out those partnerships, and it's building out those partnerships and networks and connections right across the UK. Because if you want to generate impact, you have to have connections to enable that impact to be translated. We look to accelerate that through knowledge exchange. We've got money to help build a consortium, build clusters of academics and companies together, building out relationships through staff exchanges, through small proof of concept grants to take technology from a low level, not a 1 or 2, but probably like 2 or 3 TRL up to the next TRLs, looking at policy development, really helping generate that interaction between academia and industry partnerships. That's one of the main pillars. Sort of 2/3 of our money that we have in our 5.3 million pot goes to this. 1/3 typically goes to generating the sort of societal and commercial impact through venture formation. So this is about taking an idea, exploring it, building out a value proposition, and then helping you with some pre-seed funding to turn that into a societal venture startup, or thinking about a spin out if the university owns the IP. And we can help support with training through some of our researcher to innovator programs. Also, we run dedicated iCure programs all around industrial biotech, and we've got another one coming up this year. Then we look at sort of skills development, and this is thinking about upskilling the next generation, but also reskilling the current generation. So we're looking at CPD training through our online MOOC here in Manchester, and also we're working with further education colleges in Greater Manchester to sort of help train the teachers, so then they can train generations of students moving forward through webinar learning and also CPD. So more than happy to share that blueprint activities with people if they're interested. I just thought I would show you. Can you see the next slide now? It's got pictures of logos of companies.
No.
It's not showing up.
No, okay. So I'll just tell you, and I'll keep talking, and then I'll get the important one about funding up. So who are we? Who is IBIC? So IBIC is led by the University of Manchester. It's co-created with Greater Manchester Combined Authority, because we're creating that regional impact with sort of civic bodies and also the companies across our region. Co-created with the University of Liverpool. So we have got the biotechnology cluster right across the region. We loop in Daresbury, loop in Cheshire, which includes Daresbury, which is one of the incubation campuses, and also home to the northwest in terms of STFC. And Daresbury SciTech, and we're looping in Alderley Park, sort of the UK's biggest life science campus. So right across the region, we've over 780 or 800 biotech companies, or companies where they could benefit from biotech or engineering biology. And around half of the CROs within our region as well. So we've got plenty of companies to go at. We've built our network up to over 2,000 people, so we can help connect out if you're looking for specific sector, specific activity as well. So let me just share one last slide with you, and then we can dive into a discussion. And that is a little bit about our funding portfolio. It's probably not going to work now. Can you see the funding?
Yep.
Okay, brilliant. So these are sort of the funding pots that are available. They are available for academics or PIs within university setting to apply for, and to work in partnership externally to generate that tangible impact, and impact in its broadest of senses, whether it's policy, societal, civic, environmental or commercial. So the first one we have is a partnership development grant, so it's up to 10K. Typically, it's about building a new relationship. A lot of money can go towards travel, to building out the connections, to discussing an idea, discussing a problem, with the idea that you then go on to form a sort of grant application. Quite often you can go on to build out an innovation acceleration grant. This is sort of the follow-on that we have, which is a 30K pot of funding. It's non-FECT, so it can give you up to about 12 months of a PDRA. And this is sort of an in-depth project in collaboration with a company or an external entity to help demonstrate new product, new service, integration of technology that you've developed in your lab, or thinking about scoping out new policies, regulations, influencing government, regional and national, that kind of activity. The next one we have is a secondment exchange. This was very popular in the last round of applications, up to 60K, and can be up to 12 months. And it's all about exchanging ideas, and we can have exchange of academia or PDRAs going into industry. We can have industrialists coming, or partners coming into academia. You can do it two ways, or you can just choose one way. And it's really to look to grow and nurture the talent, learn new skills, and exchange knowledge to take that impact up to the next level. We also have a 50K commercial development pot. This is starting to prove popular now as well. There's a lot of emphasis in general to create and build out that innovation economy across the UK from sort of a government push as well as through the industrial strategy. And this is thinking about taking your ideas and exploring sort of the commerciality of it. We have training programs to help you go from idea to impact. And we have 50K up for grabs to move you to the next milestone of your project. It's typically not for the research development. It's typically about shaping your idea, moving it towards the commercial funding stage. So it can be about demonstrating scale up. It can be about bringing in expertise to help you develop that business mindset. It can be helping you free up some time to go on an accelerator. It can be money to help develop out your pitch deck, for example. Those kinds of sort of commercial needs and asks to get you over that first valley of death. We also have 5K pots of funding if you're thinking about putting on an activity, and that can be anything from building out a network in a certain specific area. We've had somebody apply for sort of building out the engineering biology within quantum. It can be thinking about if you want to put on a sort of conference gathering and bringing the communities together, potentially across different regions. We're looking at doing one in April, bringing together the sort of the space or the manufacturing in low Earth orbit with biotechnology. Various reasons why pharma companies are looking to that space literally to do some manufacturing, and we're trying to bring the communities together to explore connections to generate that impact. So please think about applying. I'm more than happy to answer questions at the end. We run funding calls every 3 months. Actually, the cut-off date is the 12th of March, the next one, and then every 3 months thereafter. So I'm going to stop talking there. I kind of just wanted to set the scene and tell you a little bit about IBIC and the background and why we're here. And now I want to introduce our panelists who've joined us today. So we have Damian, Will, and Rachel with us to sort of help us sort of the conversation around what is the need for industrial biotechnology or engineering biology, and why it's important to integrate that into manufacturing processes of sort of a wide sector target area, from cosmetics, personal care, energy, materials, pharmaceuticals, food, agritech, and think about what some of the challenges are, some of the opportunities are for us as academics as we look to translate our research and have the impact, thinking particularly about the importance of building those connections and building those partnerships. So I'll stop talking now, and if we see perhaps go around our panel one by one to introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about who you are, where you are, your background, and maybe give us one example or where you think there's a bottleneck or one challenge that we can think about addressing through partnership. Damian, shall I come to you first? You're first on my screen.
Sure. Thanks, Aline. So my name's Damian Kelly. I'm the Vice President of Innovation for Croda. I've been with the business for 25 years. I look after our corporate development team, so my job is all around partnerships and sourcing new innovation, bringing new technology into the business. So we work a lot with SMEs around the world. That includes my remit is both chemistry and biotech. To move into agriculture, cosmetics, pharmaceutical, the markets that we play in. My one sort of challenge with biotech in general is the cost. There's both the cost to pilot scale and manufacturing, either having to build it or to hire it. When you want to come out the lab and you want to scale up, you need to prove your process. And then there's the cost of the final products, which in the chemical space, we're often competing with an incumbent technology that's been there, has a price point. Customers know what that price point is, and there's an expectation that anything new will be able to compete. So we need to try and make sure that the biotech process and product can compete with the incumbent one. So I'll pause there after that challenge.
Brilliant. I think we'll come back to that challenge, Damian. Will, shall we come to you next?
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Will Goundry. I am a senior principal scientist at AstraZeneca based on our Macclesfield site. And that's where we have our global centre of excellence in process design and scale up for manufacturing our medicines. And in terms of kind of what's a bottleneck at the moment or a specific challenge, I think it's still almost a cultural thing, overcoming that barrier of getting people to try something new and actually adopt and change those processes, especially while fossil-based feedstocks are available and they can keep doing what they've always been doing. So I think there's a bit there to be educating staff on what the latest advances are and why we should be bringing those into the business.
Yeah, good point there. And I think there's a couple of things we can come back and touch on. Rachel, from your perspective, do you want to introduce yourself and your background, and maybe you might have a slightly different challenge area?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Rachel Pooley. I'm currently an Innovation Discovery Manager at the University of Manchester Innovation Factory. So there's lots of innovation in there, but we're the tech transfer organisation for the University of Manchester, which means we work to support commercialisation of research that's coming out of the university and trying to launch that, creating companies and licensing IP to other companies in order to create that impact. My background is in chemistry. I did my PhD here at Manchester, and now since joining the Innovation Factory, I've worked on lots of different projects, including some that would come under industrial biotech. I think for me, I sort of work very much at a bottleneck point, and specifically for biotech, I see a big challenge being that you have to have the business case matching a sustainability case. Quite often there can be an innovation that ticks a lot of boxes on one side or on the other side, and finding a situation where you have a really interesting, sustainable new way of producing something that can also be a sustainable business case, as in sustaining the business commercially, is really quite tricky. It can be done, but it's definitely a trickier problem to solve.
I like that, multiple definitions of or multiple challenges with the one word sustainable. So I'll just come back, maybe I'll come back to you, Will, first, and then I'll maybe pose the same question to Damian. You both kind of talked about the need for sort of displacing current manufacturing processes, supply chain, which then replace products that are currently in the market and some of the challenges around that. Will, do you want to expand on that first, maybe from a sort of a chemistry sort of process development perspective, thinking specifically about defossilizing that supply chain and what you need to think about? And you talked about educating sort of the team, who, what, and why.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. It depends in different sectors, but a lot of companies, and AstraZeneca is definitely one of these, have kind of very strong ESG policies around kind of making their sector more sustainable. And I always kind of say to people, healthcare is quite an interesting one. So if you're buying a personal care product, which might be shampoo or your washing powder and things, people are very much like, oh, I don't want to damage the environment. But when it comes to health, if you're poorly and you're going to the doctor, you're not kind of saying, oh, don't give me that medicine because it's got a high carbon footprint. So a lot of the responsibility comes back onto the companies. So we're trying to drive that and be an ethical manufacturer. So we're looking across our whole manufacturing chain to understand how we can minimize our impact on the environment and reduce our carbon footprint and energy usage. And so, of course, industrial biotechnology should hopefully be part of that and part of that jigsaw. So I think in terms of my colleagues and kind of keeping the education, obviously we'll have set ways of doing things that we would have done for a long time. Chemical transformations, kind of favorite ways of doing reactions. And as biotechnology is able to replace more and more of these transformations, hopefully at lower operating temperatures and pressures, and also replacing the fossil-based feedstocks. We need to ensure that our teams of scientists, some of whom maybe left university 20 years ago, are aware of the latest advances. And I think one of the best ways of doing that is through partnerships and collaborations and rotating around the staff who are involved in those collaborations to help them get educated.
Yeah, I think, and sort of having ways to facilitate those translations of knowledge internally, I guess, and then sort of bringing in external knowledge will be useful or additive as well in terms of cutting edge thoughts and science. Damian, Will mentioned about it being down, thinking about manufacturing medicines, it kind of been on the responsibility of the companies manufacturing the therapeutics. And thinking more about the chemical sector, for those materials, the shampoos that Will mentioned, what are some of the challenges that remain there? Because that's not an easy petrochemical natural product replacement, is it? Or is it?
No, it's not a simple one. Will mentioned that there is more of a pull. There's more of a consumer pull for people to source shampoos, cleaning products, cosmetic skin creams that have a sustainability angle, that make claims where they're protecting the environment. So there is that pull from the cosmetic and home care cleaning industries that you don't necessarily get from in the pharmaceutical space. If you're sick, you want the best medicine. I do completely take Will's point. Our challenge is more around that they're currently buying chemical ingredients that go into these skin creams. Croda has 47 manufacturing sites around the world. We make 6,000 different ingredients. We've become very efficient in chemical manufacturing, and biotech is still quite new, and we haven't had the time and to make biotech as efficient as chemistry has become over the last decades. So again, hitting that price point, because although customers want something that's green and sustainable, they don't necessarily want to pay any more for it. Surfactant from petroleum, they'll switch to a surfactant from biotech, but they want to pay a very similar price unless you're showing additional benefits. So we've got to make biotech as efficient and bring down the costs of manufacture, or develop new products that have a new story and bring to the market additional new benefits that people will pay for.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point in terms of it's that pool, and it's the company pool for making the final product, but also then ultimately it's the customer pool at the end of the day. So I'll stick with Will and Damian now, and then I'll come to Rachel in a second. But just thinking about, you're talking about new processes, new products, new ways of working. How much do you both engage and rely on some of that new activities coming from sort of academic partners, and where you, or if you do and where you do, what's the secret sauce to getting that relationship to be a good one and fruitful for you from an academic perspective, from an industrial perspective? I don't know who wants to go first. Will,
I'll
do you
jump.
want to? Okay,
Sure.
yeah, go, Damian.
I think we rely quite heavily on academic relationships. We do a lot of work with academia. It's strategic, the things that we do with universities as well, relying on some very clever people who don't work for Croda to help us solve problems. So, but we've developed some very clever things together. I think we've got to make sure that together we are also focused on the final sort of commercial and economic elements of it. Making something really clever that works well is one thing, but you have to be able to make it at scale and sell it at a price point that people want it. So I think we do a lot of TRL 1 to 3 with academia. I think we could do a lot more further on, but the focus then is on scaling up and techno-economic analysis, which is something really important if you're going to get to market with some of these technologies.
Yeah, I think those are all good touch points where there can be a lot of cross learning as well. It's not just flow of knowledge from the university into the industrial partner. You gain so much knowledge and perspective as an academic, I think, as well.
Yeah.
And what's important.
Yeah, I think one of your things you highlighted before was secondments through IBIC,
yeah,
where academia can go into industry and vice versa. That could be a really supportive mechanism of bringing academics in to see some of the challenges in-house that some of the industries face in scaling things.
Yeah, I think it's a real opportunity to just expand the different ways of thinking, and just then thinking about not taking away from blue sky research, but sometimes it's good to take that blue sky research and just channel it against a problem that's existing, so you can make that holy grail impact from an academic perspective, and then it's just so fulfilling to see that turn into a product and be used by others. Yeah. Will, I don't know if you've got anything you wanted to add to that.
Yeah, I think I definitely echo what Damian says. So we do plenty of innovative research internally in our company, but often that's around adopting things which have been advanced externally. So we get more, feels like we're more getting involved from TRL 6 onwards. So I think it's really important for us to have academic partnerships or partnerships with RTOs where they're working on that earlier TRL and doing some more fundamental science. And then we're really looking at the TRL levels 4 to 6, where we can get some good partnership and shared goals to kind of help take that from, if you like, kind of down at the shake flask level through to kind of more of a pilot scale and begin to get that understanding that we'll be able to take the process forward. And I think academic partners can be industrial partners can be at a very early phase focused on, is this going to be cost effective and will I be able to kind of scale it up? So it's good to kind of have that partnership at that point to work out how we can get the line of sight to what this will be able to achieve on a big scale.
Yeah. And I think, Rachel, just thinking about, we kind of sort of agreed that industrial collaborations for academics is useful from both sides, which has always got to be mutually beneficial. What are some of the things that we should consider as academics when we look to partner with businesses, and what are some of the challenges and things, and how could that be ironed out?
Yeah, so I think it really highlights when both of you are talking about different TRLs that you work at and who has the capability to do development at different TRLs. It really highlights that there can be a gap there when you're moving from the sort of lab scale or very small pilot scale, perhaps upwards. So that partnership is definitely essential. The things I've seen as difficulties with that can be a lot, like you mentioned, Will, I think about culture and language. That if an academic comes in with like a really neat solution that's been proven on the bench scale and it's really, really promising, that sometimes, you know, if someone's coming in from a very pragmatic point of view and saying, well, does it work on this scale? It's a really valid question, but making sure that there's trust between partners, that everyone understands that you're working towards the same outcome. Everyone wants this to be successful, and it's just that people have different skill sets and different perspectives on what is important for that. So I think, yeah, bearing in mind that if you're working together on a technology, everyone wants it to be successful, but sometimes you have to ask the really hard questions early on in the process to avoid something being a really difficult and expensive failure at a really late stage. In the same way that approach is taken for drug trials and things like that. I think you have to bear in mind that if there is sort of, you know, a part of the process that relies on something that's not scalable, the earlier you look for alternatives, the better. And that's not a criticism of the initial way that it was done. It's just like, you know, the next stage in the process, an iterative process to becoming something that's really helpful, a really great process that can be scaled and used.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's really right. And I guess one of the tensions when you're in that partnership, that especially sort of an academic has, and it's one of the sort of the pressures that's sometimes on us, is you need to publish, get it in a really high impact journal. So there is a tension there. Do you want to just talk through what some of your advice is about that, publishing versus patenting, the timing, agreements,
Yeah.
and that side of things?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I could preach about best practices for a long time. I'll try to avoid that. But I think it's always worth understanding that there is a tension there, and understanding that when we're looking at managing IP, it's often people might come in and say, well, patenting is the way to go about this. And that's definitely a really useful mechanism. If you patent something first before you then publish it, you can have both. But there's a lot that goes into deciding what you're patenting, you know, what is included in that. And there's, you know, a whole strategy to do with that. So I think it's really good to consider that it's not a one-to-one conversion of I'm a patent and a paper. They might not contain exactly the same things. When you're thinking about IP, you want to look at all of the work you're doing, and that can encompass things that are eligible to be patented and then might also be published. That also includes any software, any methods, any databases. Like that, there's a lot of things surrounding your work that you might not think about as being IP, but it's important to consider the whole picture, and then you can decide, okay, this bit is really core and really important to protect in a patent, and then you can publish it later down the line. Maybe there's some other stuff that actually is really commercially important, some data sets. You don't actually need to publish that. Maybe that can be kept confidential and sort of shared confidentially with the industrial partner. So I think it's about understanding the whole picture and then sort of making informed decisions from that.
So how does that kind of sit from an industrial perspective, and how do you sort of start to think about that when you set up these partnerships across industry, academia, but also thinking about maybe clustering in maybe a pre-competitive space with a larger company in SME, or another business-to-business partnership plus an academic institution. Don't know.
I think there was some really good advice there from Rachel, and it is entirely possible for universities and industry to work together to scale. We've commercialized lots of technology. I think these conversations that Rachel's pointing out about IP, publications, have them at the beginning of the relationship, have them right up front, so you can talk about, because you can write papers that don't contain confidential information. That is entirely possible. We acknowledge as industry that PhD students need to write a thesis and need to grant, we acknowledge what needs to happen. So these things are entirely possible. I think these conversations are best had up front. I think universities today are rewarded for publications and owning IP and spin out companies, and they're not necessarily the things that industries want you. So to do, we don't necessarily want publications. Industry would like to own the IP. Industry would like you to work with us rather than spinning out a company. So I do feel at stages how universities are ranked and rewarded for their research, it isn't completely aligned with what industry wants. That's a much bigger problem than maybe this single webinar. But I think there are ways that we can work together to help commercialize, and I think we can help you with ref impact statements and stuff when we've commercialized things, and I think that would reflect very well on universities and students.
Yes, I think it's the ref impact cases is often an undersold metric within the university, and it's an undervalued sport, let's say, as an academic to write an impact case versus submitting your four-star papers, for example. But actually the one impact case, I can't remember now how many papers it's worth, 4-star papers. It's something like, Sabina's going to correct me, but something like 25 4-star papers one impact case is worth in terms of monetary return to the university. And those are often written in partnership with the industrial partner, and it's really important to get the evidence from the industrial partner, the numbers, the money saved or new products money made, plus quotes of evidence. So it's a real intensive relationship that is delivering the evidence towards that impact case, often under recognized actually. Will, I don't know if you wanted to come in on that point around
yeah, so I think for us, one of the benefits is a shared risk and having a kind of shared risk framework. A lot of the funding, and by that I mean government funding in the UK, increasingly puts pressure on universities to get matched funding from industrial partners. So we quite like networks or areas where we can share some of that early risk, because by putting in our industrial money, and for instance, Croda or other people from diverse sectors could be there, and we're already investing in the base level technology and benefiting from a wider range of projects. So I see it as kind of like there's, if you like, the two types of projects. You've got general ones which could benefit a wide range of people, and I'd probably even put in that non-specialty chemicals, so like a bulk commodity chemical that could benefit from a bio-based feedstock approach, which could be a solvent. Loads of people will be using it, but none of the kind of companies who are using it will want to own that IP. And then you move more through to very specific projects. Maybe there's going to be a bio cascade, which will make a unique material for one company, and obviously there you'll have to kind of invest and do that as a specific project with that one company.
Yeah, even testing solvents actually in a process and sharing the learnings from that would be a valuable consortium effort and to de-risk for others. Yeah, all good points. get ready to, if you've got questions, get ready to put them in pop them in the chat, and I'll come to you in a second. You can put your hands up, and we'll come to them just after this question. So get ready, again, get typing. So just thinking about, so we talked about de-risking, and we talked about sort of some of the barriers to market. So how do you sort of persuade thinking about getting the products accepted by sort of the consumer and getting them into that market space? There's a lot of sort of policy type regulation activities that have got to be done. How can coming together with sort of an academic partner, or even, you know, creating these sort of consortia, help influence that agenda? What can we be doing together to sort of help move the dial, I guess, in this space? And then same question to you afterwards, Rachel, but thinking about investors, and how do we persuade investors into this space, given some of the long-term cycles? So what can we do together, and sort of regarding to that policy regulation, getting more products adopted within sustainable manufacturing?
I think we're at this point where it's a little bit kind of like the sort of chicken and egg, right? So if there's like processes which are operating at a large scale and kind of showing that they're cost effective, people will adopt them. Maybe we're still at a kind of early adopter phase where we need to have the techno-economic assessments and the long-term modelling that kind of shows these are good processes, and long-term they will give a financial return. Maybe in the short term, where that's kind of like, you know, next 3 or 4 years, they will be slightly more expensive, and then there'll be a tipping point, and now it'll be beneficial, but we need to invest at this stage. So it's really understanding those kind of long-term cost models and the benefit of adopting and taking it forward.
Yeah, all good collaboration areas.
Yeah, I think there's a lot we can do together. I think, you know, there's a lot of different regulations in different markets, from pharma, agriculture, home care, cosmetics. You know, we've started the conversation by saying we're often, you know, competing with petrochemical supply chains, which are ultra efficient, have been there for a very long time. Policies are aligned to them. Some of those supply chains are still subsidized today. I think giving some of the bio-based supply chains a helping hand to help them compete would be helpful. At least give us a level playing field, so that we can be more competitive. There's a lot of cost involved in setting up these supply chains, from feedstocks that could be put to better use than maybe burning them for energy. Maybe they could be converted into chemicals. CO2 capture for the production of new chemicals, can we incentivize that? A lot of all these supply chains require new infrastructure, new build, new assets. Can there be some policy regulation and incentives to help lower the burden of all that upfront cost, to allow it to happen? So there's a number of things, and I think we can work together, we can lobby together, we can show that the science is there, we can show how we are working together to lower costs over time, so that, you know, some of these subsidies don't have to be in place forever. You know, we're looking for maybe a helping hand at the beginning to get some things up and running and started, and then we'll become self-sufficient over the period of time. So yeah, there's a number of different government agencies we need to influence, and you know, for different markets, different chemistries. So
a lot for us to come together and go at as a wider community to ensure we target all the different sectors and bodies. So given all those challenges, Rachel, for a new company emerging out from the HE sector, it's quite a long sort of a journey for companies to go on in terms of deep tech is always, you know, sort of recognised as being sort of a longer term from investment to return on the capital invested. How do we start to persuade investors that this is something good to invest in, and given the long-term nature?
Yeah, I think that the key thing with investors is that they all have different investment thesi. So they all have different profiles of technologies or types of companies they invest in, different timelines for when they need to see a return by. And I don't think that it's really worth the effort trying to convince an investor that has a thesis that doesn't match your technology that they should invest. There's plenty of others out there. So I think, from the perspective of a new company, it's really worth doing your research and finding out which investors are suitable for your technology, because there are some out there. There's a category of impact investing where there will be either an impact case or like a carbon case as a very particular thing that goes alongside the business case, and they want to see that as well. So I think it's really worth finding out who those investors are, and going for places where people are set up to be ready to invest in this type of thing, but also they will have other companies in their portfolio who are trying to do similar things. They're probably better set up to help you get subsequent investment down the line as well, and create a bit of a network or a cohort approach with other people who are trying to do the same thing. And like Damian said, there's lots of industry-wide issues that need to be addressed. And I think something else you have to be ready for as well is you might be developing a very specific technology for a very specific purpose, but you're still going to come in for those questions about how does the wider industry work. And I think you have to accept that and be ready with some answers as to how you're going to address that or mitigate that or work with it. Because you can make one single piece of the puzzle work really well, and that is valuable, but if it doesn't fit into everything else, then it's not going to succeed, unfortunately. So you just have to be aware of that as well.
Yeah, I think that's all good points and good advice, and just different things to think about at different stages of the journey. Good. Okay, so I will open it out for questions to people now. If you want to type something in to the chat or want to just put your camera on or raise your hand, we'll come to you.
So we've a question from Joseph Lynch in the chat. Is there a preference in the secondment scheme on how the secondment should look? Would you expect full-time work at the partner organisation, or can it be split 50-50? Also, could you provide an example of the contribution expected from the partner? Would you accept in kind through consumables, analyst time and equipment?
Okay, actually, if you want to keep an eye on the chat, Sabina, because my Teams must be playing up. I can't see anything coming through. So the type of secondment, it can be anything as long as there's a movement of one person from one institution to another, or not academia to academia, but academia to business, business to academia, or external partner, government, lobbying body, IP law firm that's industrial biotech related and generating that impact. It can be full time, it can be part time, it can be one day, a couple of days a month, one day a week. So it's very, very flexible. It's whatever you need for that specific project to generate the impact. So it can be small or large. As you need it to be to deliver something for that project. In terms of the expected contributions from the external partner, we love to get cash match. That's one good tick for our KPIs for EPSRC, and that cash, it depends on the size of the company. So if you are a larger, you're engaging with a larger corporate, then we would potentially anticipate a larger volume. If you're engaging with an SME, then we appreciate, their budgets are super tight, and smaller cash contributions or even in kind. It depends on the value of the exchange and where that value, which direction the value is going in. because a company is not going to put in match funding if they are giving you the knowledge. So we have to be mindful of which direction the knowledge is going in and where the value is flowing. So in-kinds are also acceptable. It just has to balance on the nature of the project, if that makes sense. Any other questions? No, everyone's quite shy. Makes a change from my online teaching lectures. But what we'll do is I'll just remind you that there's different ways that you can get engaged in IBIC, and through the grant funding activities that we talked about, the relationship builder, proof of concept, secondment, building up money to put on an event of some description, bringing 200 people together. You can come and give a webinar. We do monthly webinars on different topics, ranging from startup journeys to outcomes of a secondment partnership, or a specific topic like biocatalysis or scale up or technoeconomics. If you want to come and share the knowledge you have with the wider community to help you build out connections, please reach out and get in touch. The contact details are in the chat, and the email and LinkedIn, and join us for an event that we're putting on. For example, we've got a careers event for early stage researchers next week in the MIB, where we've over 100 people coming and interacting with several companies and hearing about how you can get yourself ready to land that top spot job opportunity.
I think Rachel had her hand up
Oh,
briefly.
sorry, Rachel.
I was just thinking, I've actually got a question, probably primarily for Damian, if that's okay.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, sure. So you mentioned that when you're looking to replace fossil fuel-based products, especially in consumer products, that the cost is quite difficult, and that unless you can sort of have an extra claim for the product, then consumers are unwilling to pay that. Do you find that greenwashing is a big issue in that space? Because I've definitely been had before when I buy something that sort of says it's green in some way on the bottle and it's got lots of pictures of leaves, and then I have a look down the ingredients and I think, hang on a second, this is looking quite fossil fuel based to me. Yeah, I just wondered if that's something that you struggle with a lot.
Yeah, look, I think you can. I think green claims can be exaggerated, and there probably are products out there that contain some green products, but the rest can be petroleum. It depends on the clever wording on the packaging. I don't have specific examples of necessarily, but yeah, I think you do need to be very careful. Your whole credibility and your reputation hangs on the claims you're making, so it's not worth greenwashing. I don't think, because your customers ask so many questions about the product, how it's been manufactured, where it comes from, the origins, the life cycle analysis, that any sort of false claims or any sort of that you might have made up front, I think will come out in the wash eventually as you go down the line as trying to have your ingredients or your products approved by customers. So I think customers know that it's very hard to be absolutely completely sustainable. Even in the world of biotech, you might be lowering temperatures, so you're using less energy, but in some biotech cases, you're using more water. So there's an offset. And I think customers are pretty intelligent. I think they know this and they realize this. I think as long as you can explain and you're upfront, and you can show how you're going to try and minimize even water use in the future, and tell the story of how you're on a sustainability journey and how you solve some problems, but you've still got other problems to solve, and you don't want to solve one problem only to create another somewhere else. you know, there's a lot of movement from land-based oils at the moment towards biotech to reduce land, but that could create other problems further down the line in other spaces. So everything's a balance and a conversation and a decision.
I was just reflecting actually, Damian, on everyone's kind of familiar within the UK with the sort of like traffic light ratings on food, kind of saying is it good or bad or healthy, you know, salt and fat and things like that. And I wonder whether there'll be in the next few years kind of a movement to almost kind of put some kind of rating on products against different criteria. So it'll be like, you know, amount of water used, amount of carbon dioxide, and is it coming from a renewable feedstock, to give consumers some kind of insight there. Because otherwise there's a lot of marketing claims going on. I guess the one that people are most familiar with at the moment is the sustainable forestry mark on cardboard or paper products, kind of showing that, you know, that's coming from, you know, somewhere where trees are being replanted and it's not just virgin forest it's going. But I guess that could be helpful for consumers going forward.
Yeah, excellent points.
Yeah.
Okay, we have another question. This is from Jessie Sweetman. We've touched on challenges around IP agreements. Is this the biggest barrier to academic industry collaboration in the biomanufacturing space? And if not, what is, and how could we resolve it?
Good question. Maybe last one to end on. I'm conscious of time. Will, Damian, from your perspectives.
Yeah, no, I'll kind of say super quickly, like IP is not, I wouldn't say it's the number one sticking point. Normally we can agree some terms between industry and academic partners. And if it's going to have a real benefit, then you know, we're happy to kind of pay for a license fee and drive that technology forward. I think more crucial is will it work on a big scale? So we can demonstrate lots of kind of cool things on a small scale and shake fast, but it's getting that understanding of, will that be robust? Can we overcome the heat transfer, mass transfer issues of scaling up a product? You know, and the strain stability of what we're using and things. And making sure that we get a really good, consistent performance on a large scale.
Damian?
Yeah, I'm not sure it's the biggest challenge, IP agreements. You can often negotiate this to make it work for both parties. It takes a little bit of sitting down, a bit of flexibility on both sides, but it can often be done. You know, it goes back to that point of, you know, ref impact statements and universities looking good because they own IP. But then universities aren't necessarily going to commercialize the IP. So, you know, industry wants to be able to know the IP is being well managed. It's being filed in all the appropriate countries and regions where you want to exploit it. And they're decisions that industry needs to make if they're ultimately going to commercialize it. So, again, I think IP better sits with industry because then they can pay for it, manage it, and commercialize it. But we can reward universities for all of their work in helping to create that IP. It's about recognizing it, and maybe there's a different reward mechanism in place that we can find a way of working with the universities on.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the challenges that you've both just outlined there come down to academics on an individual level understanding the drivers of industry and getting their science tech ideas to match the needs of industry, not selling your soul as an academic, but just pivoting and understanding the drivers and the pathways and the mechanisms to making it useful for both sides. And the universities thinking about the bigger picture sometimes and thinking what's in it from them longer term. It's not just about the cash in the door for the project. It's about the influence and the stake and the benefits from the IP generation, wherever that ends up sitting, and influencing government, not only about the policies and regulations to enable a lot of these products to come to market that are bio-based or are made through bio routes, but also then recognised as the incentives for the commercial side, and there's the incentives and recognition through the sort of academic side, through ref, impact cases, and beyond. So on that challenge area, I think it's time to leave it there. So I wanted to just thank everybody for coming today and the questions posed. Sorry if there were others in the chat that we didn't get to, but in particular, I want to thank Rachel, Will, and Damian for taking the time and talking to us today. And I think we heard challenges, the big picture and then the small picture, and lots of areas that we can come together, hopefully partner, exchange that knowledge from the supply chain through to the technological processing routes, to the scale up, to the regulation and policy, and so on and so forth. The more we work and talk together, the faster hopefully we will make some of this happen. So thanks very much, everyone. Look forward to seeing grant applications and ideas for meetings, suggestions for webinars and so on, and hopefully see you at some meeting moving forward. Thanks very much.
Thanks.
Thank you, Elaine.
Thank you.